I slammed my textbooks onto the study desk louder than I intended. So that's your decision? You're ditching me to study with Ryan instead? Sophia glanced up from her phone, caught between shame and stubborn pride. Alex, be practical. Finals start in 2 weeks, and Ryan's the top student. You know how critical these scores are for getting into graduate school. We've been study partners for 3 years, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. We planned this weeks ago. She stood, smoothing her skirt with careful fingers. You need to be reasonable. This is my future. Ryan has connections with the professors. He knows exactly what material will appear on the exam. She paused, searching for words. You're smart, but you're ranked 15th. I need to think strategically here. Something cold and heavy settled in my chest. Strategic. Don't make this personal, she said quickly. These are just study sessions. You're overreacting. I gathered my books. You're right about one thing. I am taking it personally. Here's what happens next. You go study with Ryan, get all his notes, all his insights, all his professor connections. But we're finished, Sophia. Completely finished. Her eyes went wide. What? Over study partners? Alex, you're being ridiculous. No, I said, walking toward the door. I'm being clear. You made your choice. You picked rank over loyalty, strategy over 3 years together. That tells me everything I need to know about what I mean to you. Alex, wait, she started, but I was already leaving. Good luck on your exams, I said without turning around. You'll need it. I heard her call after me, saying something about overreacting, about being immature. But I kept walking. My roommate Tyler found me an hour later in our dorm room, textbooks spread across my desk. Dude, Sophia just texted asking if you're okay. What happened? I told him everything. He whistled low. Man, that's brutal. So what are you going to do? Study, I said simply. Harder than I've ever studied in my life. Tyler grinned. That's my boy. Show her what a mistake she made. The thing about being ranked 15th was that I'd always been comfortable there. Good enough for scholarships, good enough to make my parents proud, good enough that I didn't stress much. I studied consistently but never pushed myself to the absolute limit. I'd always told myself that balance was important, that college was about more than just grades. But now I had something to prove. I started that very night. While Sophia was presumably at Ryan's apartment getting insider secrets to acing the exams, I was in the library going through every single lecture note from the entire semester. Not just reading them, truly understanding them. Professor Hayes's advanced microeconomics. Professor Kim's statistical methods. Professor Brooks's financial modeling. Professor Carter's corporate finance. 4 brutal courses that made up our final semester before graduation. I created a new study system. First pass, understand the concept. Second pass, apply it to problems. Third pass, teach it to myself out loud until I could explain it to a 5-year-old. Fourth pass, find the hardest possible practice problems and solve them without looking at solutions. My friends started noticing. Tyler would find me at 2 in the morning, still working through problem sets. Alex, man, you need to sleep. I'll sleep after finals. This isn't healthy. Neither is settling for 15th place. But it wasn't just anger driving me, though that was part of it. Something had shifted when Sophia made her choice. For 3 years, I'd been comfortable. Comfortable with my rank, comfortable with my relationship, comfortable with my future. Sophia's decision had shattered that comfort. In the wreckage, I found something I didn't know I had. Hunger. The first few days were the hardest. I'd gotten so used to study sessions with Sophia that doing it alone felt strange, incomplete. We had routines. She'd quiz me on definitions while I'd work through the math problems. Then we'd switch. We'd take coffee breaks together, complain about difficult concepts together, celebrate small victories together. Now those routines were gone, and I had to build new ones. I discovered the 24-hour study lounge on the 3rd floor of the library that I'd never bothered with before. It was quieter than the main reading room, populated by the truly serious students. the ones who weren't just aiming for good grades but for mastery. I recognized a few faces. Maya Torres, who was consistently in the top 3. Stephen Parker, who'd published undergraduate research. Amy Chen, who was already working with professors on grant proposals. These were the students who made rank 15 look like mediocrity. I set up my workspace in a corner desk and got to work. The first night, Maya approached me around midnight. "Alex, right. You're usually ranked 15th. "That's me," I said, unsure where this was going. "What brings you to the serious floor?" She didn't sound judgmental, just curious. "Trying something different," I said. She nodded thoughtfully. "Ryan's been bragging that Sophia dumped you to study with him. That true?" Word traveled fast in our department. "Something like that." "That's rough. Though between you and me, Ryan's ranked first because he's good at gaming the system, not because he actually understands the material deeply. He memorizes past exams, networks with teaching assistants, plays the academic politics game perfectly." "And you?" I asked. "How are you ranked 3rd?" She smiled. "I actually love this stuff. Economics isn't just a grade for me. It's fascinating. The way markets work, the way incentives drive behavior, the mathematical elegance of it all. Most people study to pass. I study because I genuinely want to understand." That conversation changed something for me. I realized I'd been studying to maintain my rank, to meet expectations, to keep my scholarship. But I'd never stopped to consider whether I actually loved the material itself. That night, I started over. Not just reviewing for exams, but actually engaging with economics as a discipline. Why did markets clear at equilibrium? What were the deeper implications of information asymmetry? How did game theory explain real-world behavior beyond the textbook examples? I saw Sophia around campus. Of course, our department wasn't that big. She was always with Ryan. At the coffee shop, in the library, walking between classes. He was everything you'd expect from the top student. Perfectly organized notes, expensive laptop, confidence that bordered on arrogance. Ryan had a way of holding court in the study areas, surrounded by admirers who hoped some of his success would rub off on them. Sophia sat beside him, looking proud to be part of his inner circle. Once I overheard him explaining a concept from microeconomics to her. "See, the professor always structures the exam with a basic monopoly competition question, then an oligopoly question, then something mixing the two. It's formulaic. You just memorize the patterns and plug in the numbers." But that wasn't right. Professor Hayes had explicitly said in class that she valued understanding over pattern recognition. She'd warned us that this year's exam would test our ability to think, not just calculate. I almost said something, then stopped myself. Not my problem anymore. Once Sophia tried to approach me at the student center. "Alex, can we talk?" "I'm busy," I said, not looking up from my financial modeling practice problems. "5 minutes, please." I finally looked at her. "What do you want, Sophia?" "I want you to understand that this wasn't personal. I'm not choosing Ryan over you. It's just for the exams." "And then what?" I asked. "After exams, you want to go back to how things were. You want me to be your boyfriend again until the next time someone more useful comes along. That's not fair." "You're right," I said, closing my textbook. "What's not fair is thinking I'd wait around while you use people based on what they can do for your rank. What's not fair is 3 years meaning so little that you'd throw it away for some study notes. What's not fair is you standing here acting like I'm the unreasonable one." Her face flushed. "Fine. If you want to be stubborn about this, fine. But don't come crying to me when you see my name above yours on the results board." I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Looking forward to it." She stormed off and I went back to my studies. The weeks before finals became a blur. I barely slept, barely ate, barely did anything except study. My other friends started expressing concern, but Tyler defended me. "Leave him alone. He knows what he's doing." And I did. For the first time in my academic career, I wasn't just going through the motions. I was mastering the material. Every concept in microeconomics, every statistical method, every financial model. I didn't just know them. I understood them at a fundamental level. Maya became an unexpected ally. She didn't study with me. She was clear that she worked better alone. But we'd take coffee breaks together, discussing concepts at a level far beyond exam preparation. "You've changed," she observed one night. 3 weeks ago, you knew the material well enough to get an A. Now you're actually thinking like an economist. Is there a difference? I asked. Huge difference. Most students, even good ones like Ryan, they learn economics. They memorize the models, practice the math, understand the theories at a surface level. But they don't think like economists. They don't see the world through that lens. And I'm starting to. You're starting to, she confirmed. I can tell by the questions you're asking, the connections you're making. That's what separates the truly exceptional from the merely excellent. I started noticing it too. Walking across campus, I'd analyze the economics of the food trucks positioning themselves strategically near high-traffic areas. Watching students rush to sign up for popular classes, I'd see an auction mechanism at work. Reading news articles about policy decisions, I'd immediately consider the incentive structures and game theory implications. Economics had stopped being something I studied and become a way I understood the world. 3 days before finals, I ran into Professor Hayes in the hallway. She was known for being tough but fair, and her microeconomics course was considered the hardest in the department. "Alex," she said, surprised. "Working late?" "Just reviewing, Professor." She studied me for a moment. "You know, I've been teaching for 15 years. I can always tell when a student is truly engaged with the material versus just memorizing for exams. These past few weeks, your questions in class have been different. Deeper. What changed?" I thought about how to answer. I guess I realized I wasn't pushing myself hard enough. She nodded slowly. "Sometimes we need the right motivation. Though I hope you're doing this for yourself, not just to prove something to someone else." "Started that way," I admitted. "But it's become something more now. I actually love this stuff, Professor. I never realized it before." She smiled. "That's what I like to hear. Good luck on the exam, Alex. I have a feeling you're going to surprise a lot of people." Finals week arrived. Our department had a tradition where all the exams were scheduled in a specific order, building from what was considered easiest to hardest. Statistical methods on Monday, corporate finance on Tuesday, financial modeling on Wednesday, and advanced microeconomics on Thursday. I saw Sophia before the first exam. She looked confident, relaxed even, sitting with Ryan and his study group. They were laughing about something, and I caught Ryan's smug expression as he said, "Remember, question 3 is always about regression analysis. Professor Kim never changes that format." I sat alone, reviewing my notes one final time, and walked into the examination hall with a clear mind. The statistical methods exam was exactly as challenging as I'd prepared for. 3 hours of complex problems, theoretical questions, and practical applications. I worked through each question methodically, checking and rechecking my answers. When I handed in my paper, I felt something I'd never felt after an exam before. Complete confidence. Walking out, I saw Ryan's study group looking less certain. Sophia caught my eye and quickly looked away. Corporate finance on Tuesday was tougher. Professor Carter had a reputation for trick questions that seemed straightforward but required deep understanding. But I'd spent hours analyzing past exams, understanding his patterns, and more importantly, truly grasping the underlying principles. There was one question that I could see was designed to trap students. It asked about optimal capital structure for a fictional company, providing what seemed like straightforward financial data. Most students would plug the numbers into the standard formulas and call it done. But I noticed something in the fine print. The company operated in a highly regulated industry with specific debt restrictions. The standard formula didn't apply. You had to adjust for the regulatory constraints, then consider the tax implications, then factor in the bankruptcy costs specific to regulated industries. It was a question that rewarded understanding, not just calculation. I spent 45 minutes on it alone, building my answer from first principles. Financial modeling on Wednesday was a marathon. 6 hours of building complex models from scratch, testing them against scenarios, and explaining our methodology. My hands cramped from typing and my eyes burned from staring at the computer screen. But every model worked. Every scenario passed. Every explanation was clear. The exam required us to build a complete financial projection model for a fictional company considering an acquisition. We had to account for synergies, integration costs, financing options, and risk factors. Then we had to run sensitivity analyses and create executive summary presentations of our findings. I practiced this type of modeling dozens of times over the past 2 weeks, but never at this level of complexity. The exam threw curveballs. Unexpected regulatory issues, market disruptions mid-scenario, changes in interest rates. Each one required adjusting the model on the fly. But I'd learned to build flexible models, ones that could adapt to changing assumptions. While other students were panic rebuilding their spreadsheets, I was just adjusting parameters and watching the results update automatically. I saw Sophia after that exam. She looked exhausted, stressed. Ryan was complaining loudly about one of the modeling problems. That wasn't in any of the practice materials, he was saying. How are we supposed to know they'd completely changed the format? Professor Brooks basically sabotaged everyone. Sophia caught my eye and quickly looked away. I could see the doubt creeping into her expression. 3 exams down and her strategy of studying with Ryan wasn't delivering the easy success she'd expected. Thursday came. Advanced Microeconomics. The final exam. The hardest course in our program. The one that separated the truly exceptional from the merely good. The night before, I barely slept, but not from anxiety. I was too excited. I'd spent weeks diving deep into microeconomic theory, not just learning it, but truly understanding it. I was ready to show what I could do. Professor Hayes's exam was legendary. 3 hours, 10 questions. Each one requiring not just knowledge, but genuine analytical thinking. No calculators, no formula sheets, just your brain and your understanding of economic principles. I arrived early and sat in my usual spot near the back. The room filled with nervous energy as students filed in. Ryan sat front and center, radiating confidence. Sophia sat a few rows behind him, looking far less certain than she had at the start of finals week. Professor Hayes handed out the exam booklets. You may begin. I opened the exam booklet and read through all 10 questions first. They were brutal. Game theory applications, market equilibrium analysis, welfare economics, information asymmetry. Questions that couldn't be solved with memorization. Questions that required you to think. Question 1 asked us to analyze a 3-player sequential game with incomplete information. Question 5 presented a market with externalities and asked us to derive the optimal tax. Question 7 described a labor market with signaling and adverse selection and asked us to explain the equilibrium outcomes. These weren't textbook problems. These were scenarios that required genuine economic reasoning. I smiled. For 3 hours I wrote. I drew diagrams, derived equations, explained assumptions, and constructed arguments. I lost myself completely in the problems, and when the proctor called time, I looked down at my booklet and realized I'd filled every page, answered every question, and done it with complete confidence. Question 10 had been the most challenging. It presented a complex market scenario involving multiple firms, product differentiation, consumer search costs, and strategic advertising. We had to analyze the market equilibrium, explain why it might be inefficient, and propose policy interventions with a detailed welfare analysis. I'd spent 45 minutes on that question alone, building a complete model from scratch, considering multiple angles, and producing an answer that I knew was far beyond what most students would attempt. It wasn't just correct. It was elegant. Walking out of that exam hall, I felt different. Lighter. Like I'd proven something to myself that had nothing to do with Sophia or Ryan or ranks. I discovered what I was actually capable of when I stopped being comfortable. Tyler was waiting outside. How'd it go? Good, I said. Really good. Sophia came out about 20 minutes ago. She looked like she'd been hit by a truck. I shrugged. Not my concern anymore. Dude, I think she's finally realizing what she lost. She kept looking around like she was trying to find you. Too late for that, I said. Results would be posted in exactly 1 week. The department had a tradition of posting comprehensive final rankings on a public board in the main building along with individual course grades. It was old-fashioned, but the faculty believed in transparency. That week was strange. Without exams to study for, without the driving purpose that had consumed me, I felt almost lost. I slept for 12 hours straight the first day. Then I started thinking about what came next. I'd applied to several graduate programs, but half-heartedly. Now I went back and looked at them with fresh eyes. I updated my applications with my expected improved performance. I reached out to professors about research opportunities. I started planning for a future that wasn't comfortable, but challenging and exciting. Maya and I met for coffee on Wednesday. "How do you think you did?" she asked. "Better than I've ever done on anything," I said honestly. "That microeconomics exam, I've never felt more in my element." She smiled. "I noticed. You were completely absorbed." I finished 20 minutes early and looked around. Most people looked stressed, panicked. Ryan looked smug. "You looked like you were having the time of your life." "I kind of was," I admitted. "Is that weird?" "Not at all. That's how I feel when I'm really engaged with a problem. That's the feeling that tells you you're doing what you're meant to do." Sophia tried to talk to me twice during that week. Both times I politely but firmly declined. There was nothing left to say. The first time was in the dining hall. She approached my table while I was eating lunch with Tyler and some other friends. "Alex, can we please talk? Just for a minute." Everyone at the table went quiet, watching. "Sophia, I have nothing to say to you. Please respect that. I just want to apologize." "I don't need your apology. I need you to leave me alone." She stood there for a moment, tears forming in her eyes, then walked away. One of my friends whistled low. "Cold, man." "She made her choice," I said. "I'm just respecting it." The second time was worse. She caught me outside the library on Friday evening. "Alex, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but can't we at least talk about this?" "What is there to talk about, Sophia? You want forgiveness. You want closure. You want to feel better about what you did. I want to explain." "You already explained. You were being strategic. You chose Ryan because he was ranked first. You thought he was your ticket to better grades, better grad schools, a better future. You calculated the value of our relationship against the value of his study notes and found us wanting. That's not how it was. That's exactly how it was. And you know what? I hope you got what you wanted from him. I hope his study strategies were everything you hoped for, because that's all you're going to get." I walked away and this time she didn't follow. "You're really done with her, aren't you?" Tyler asked that night. "Completely. You know she's been telling people that you're being petty, that she was just trying to secure her future, and you made it into a whole thing." I nodded. "Let her tell whatever story she needs to tell. The results will speak for themselves." Results day arrived. The entire department gathered in the main building lobby at 9 in the morning. The board was covered with a cloth and Dean Martinez stood in front of it, giving his usual speech about academic excellence and the journey being more important than the destination. I stood at the back of the crowd, calm. Sophia was near the front with Ryan and their group. I could see her fidgeting, nervous. Ryan looked confident as always, probably expecting to maintain his top rank. Dean Martinez finished his speech. Without further ado, the final rankings for this year's graduating class. He pulled the cloth away. The crowd surged forward, everyone trying to see their names, their ranks, their scores. I stayed back, letting the chaos unfold. Then I heard it. "Oh my God. Is that? No way. How is that possible?" The crowd started parting. People turning to look for someone. Looking for me. Tyler pushed through and grabbed my arm, his face split in the biggest grin I'd ever seen. Dude, you have to see this." He dragged me forward and the crowd parted to let me through. I looked up at the board. Final rankings, graduating class 2025. Alex Morgan, 98.7 GPA. Ryan Sullivan, 98.1 GPA. Maya Torres, 97.8 GPA. Sophia Bennett, 96.2 GPA. I stared at it, not quite believing what I was seeing. Not just first. Not just ahead of Ryan. But significantly ahead, with nearly perfect scores across all 4 finals. The individual course results were listed below. Advanced Microeconomics, Alex Morgan, 100%. Financial Modeling, Alex Morgan, 99%. Corporate Finance, Alex Morgan, 98%. Statistical Methods, Alex Morgan, 97%. I'd gotten the only perfect score in Advanced Microeconomics. The course where Ryan had been so confident. The course where Sophia had been so sure that Ryan's insider knowledge would make the difference. Professor Hayes appeared beside me. I told you that you'd surprise people, though I'll admit you surprised even me. That microeconomics exam was the best I've seen in my entire teaching career. Your analysis of the multi-firm equilibrium problem in question 10 was graduate-level work. Thank you, Professor, I managed to say. The crowd around me was exploding. Friends congratulating me, people I barely knew slapping me on the back, everyone wanting to know how I'd done it. Through it all, I looked across the room and found Sophia. She was frozen, staring at the board, her face white. Ryan beside her looked equally shocked, his earlier confidence completely shattered. He was staring at his second-place ranking like he couldn't process it. But it was Sophia's expression that told the whole story. The dawning realization of what she'd done, what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away. She'd gambled on Ryan being her path to success, and instead she'd thrown away someone who would have been there for her regardless of rankings. Our eyes met across the crowded room. I saw it all there. The regret, the shock, the desperate wish to take it back. She started moving toward me, pushing through the crowd. Alex, wait. Her voice carried over the noise, but I kept walking. Tyler followed me outside along with a group of friends who were still celebrating, cheering, making jokes about the look on Ryan's face. That was the coldest thing I've ever seen, Tyler said, laughing. And I am here for it. My phone started buzzing. Text after text from Sophia. Alex, we need to talk. I made a mistake. I should have believed in you. Please, can we just talk? I'm sorry. You were right about everything. I was so stupid. Please. I blocked her number. Maya found me later that afternoon in the library. Congratulations, she said, sitting down across from me. Though I'm not surprised. You earned it. Thanks. You too. 3rd place is amazing. She shrugged. I'm happy with it. More importantly, I learned a lot this semester. But you transformed. That's rare. Had good motivation, I said. Heartbreak motivation is powerful, but it usually just makes people bitter or leads to burnout. You actually used it to become better. That's the difference between you and most people. The next few days were surreal. Suddenly everyone wanted to know my study methods, my secrets, how I'd jump from 15th to 1st. Graduate programs I'd applied to started reaching out, asking if I was still interested, offering better financial packages. One program I'd applied to as a safety school, a decent but not prestigious program, suddenly offered me a full scholarship plus a research stipend. We'd be honored to have our top-ranked student join our program, the email read. But the really exciting offer came from Professor Hayes. She called me into her office 3 days after results were posted. Alex, I want to talk to you about your future. Have you considered a PhD? I've thought about it, but I was planning to work for a few years first, save some money. What if I told you that wouldn't be necessary? She leaned forward. I've recommended you for a prestigious PhD program at Oxford. Full funding, generous stipend, and they're very interested. With your performance and your evident work ethic, you'd be an excellent fit. They're looking for students who can push boundaries, not just maintain them. Oxford. I'd never even considered it. It seemed so far beyond my reach, reserved for the truly elite students, not someone who'd been ranked 15th for 3 years. I don't know what to say, Professor. Say you'll consider it. I've already spoken with Professor William Clark there. He's doing cutting-edge work in behavioral economics and game theory. He read your exam responses, all of them. He specifically requested that I reach out to you. He read my exams. I may have sent them to him, she said with a small smile. I wanted a second opinion on whether I was right about your potential. He agreed with me. Actually, he was even more enthusiastic than I was. His exact words were, "This student thinks like a young scholar. Get him to Oxford." William Clark. Nobel Prize winner. One of the most influential economists of the modern era. And a professor at Oxford thought I reminded him of a young scholar. I felt dizzy. When do I need to decide? The formal application deadline has passed, but for exceptional cases, and trust me, you're exceptional, they can make accommodations. I'd need your answer within 2 weeks to get the paperwork started. Oxford. A full PhD at one of the world's top economics programs. Studying with leaders in the field. Research opportunities one couldn't even imagine. But it meant leaving everything I knew. My friends, my family, my country. Starting completely over in a new place. Then again, what was keeping me here? I saw Sophia one final time before I made my decision. She was sitting alone in the coffee shop where we used to study together. Against my better judgment, I went over. "Can I sit?" She looked up, hope flashing across her face. "Please." I sat down across from her. She looked different. Tired. Older somehow. There were dark circles under her eyes. "I've been trying to reach you," she started. "I know. Alex, I was wrong about everything. I should have trusted you. Should have been your partner. I chose wrong." "Yes," I said simply. "You did. Can we? Is there any chance?" "No," I said, not unkindly. "There isn't." Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I chose to study with Ryan. Because I made one mistake. It wasn't about the studying, Sophia. It was about what that choice revealed. You treated me like I was disposable, like 3 years meant nothing compared to a possible advantage on some exams. The moment something shinier came along, you were willing to discard me. I know. I know. And I've regretted it every single day, especially now seeing what you accomplished." "That's the thing though," I interrupted. "If I'd bombed the exams, if I'd stayed at 15th place, would you still regret it? Or do you only regret it because I came first?" She opened her mouth, but couldn't answer. "That's what I thought," I said. "You don't regret how you treated me. You regret that you bet on the wrong person. That's not true. Sophia, I hope you have a good life. I hope you learn from this. But we're done. Completely, permanently done. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just finished." I stood up to leave. "Where will you go?" she asked quietly. "Oxford. Full scholarship for a PhD program. I leave in 2 months." I saw the final crack in her composure. Her face crumpled and she looked like she might cry. "That's amazing. Congratulations. You deserve it." "Thank you," I said. "And Sophia, Ryan came second. That should have been enough. The problem was never about being the best. It was about who you were willing to throw away to get there." I left her sitting there and didn't look back. The next few weeks were a blur of planning, paperwork, and goodbyes. I accepted Oxford's offer. I told my family, who were shocked but proud. I said goodbye to friends who promised to visit. But the most important conversation I had was with Maya. "So you're really going," she said over our final coffee together. "I really am." "Good. You belong there, with people who think like you do. What about you? What's next?" "Stanford accepted me for their PhD program. I'm heading west. Maybe we'll end up at the same conferences someday, presenting competing papers." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. I started hearing stories about Sophia through the grapevine. She'd been accepted to her top choice grad program at Columbia, but deferred her admission. Rumor was she couldn't handle being there after everyone in the department knew the story of what she'd done. Ryan too faced challenges. Despite being ranked second, several programs rejected him. One professor apparently said in a conference that Ryan was technically proficient but intellectually incurious. A devastating critique in academic circles. He ended up at a good but not great program, which for someone who'd been ranked first for 3 years must have felt like failure. But that was their story now, not mine. 2 months later, Tyler drove me to the airport. Man, Oxford. You're really doing it. I really am. You know, Sophia dropped out of her grad program. Apparently she couldn't handle everyone knowing what she did. The story kind of spread. I didn't know, I said. I hope she figures things out. You're too nice, Tyler said. She screwed you over. And I used that to become better than I ever would have been otherwise. In a weird way, she did me a favor. At the airport, I posted one thing on social media. My first post in months. A picture of my acceptance letter to Oxford with a simple caption. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is show you exactly what you're capable of without them. Thanks for the motivation. Off to start the next chapter. Within an hour, it had hundreds of likes and comments, including one from Sophia, which I didn't read or respond to. But I heard later from Tyler that she'd commented, "You deserve this. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you have an amazing life." Too little, too late. On the plane, I thought about the past few months. The anger, the studying, the triumph, the satisfaction of proving everyone wrong, including myself. But more than that, I thought about what I'd learned. That comfort is the enemy of potential. That sometimes the people who hurt you are actually revealing your true strength. That rank doesn't define you, but how you respond to challenges does. My phone buzzed with a message from Professor Hayes. Spoke to your future advisor at Oxford. They're excited to have you. Make the most of it, Alex. You've earned every bit of this. I looked out the window as the plane took off, watching my old life get smaller and smaller below me. Sophia had made her choice. She'd chosen strategy over loyalty, rank over relationship, Ryan's guarantee over my potential. And in doing so, she'd given me the greatest gift imaginable. The motivation to discover who I really was and what I was truly capable of. I smiled, put in my headphones, and started reviewing the materials my Oxford advisor had sent. There was so much to learn, so much to discover, so much potential to unlock. And this time, I wasn't going to hold back.